Silas awoke to the sound of birds singing in the trees around him. He sat up in his tent, his back cracking as he rose. To his surprise, he slept reasonably well and felt rejuvenated upon waking up. He found his boots and laced them up and then exited the tent. It was a beautiful fall morning. A crisp, cool air filled his lungs as he smelled the sweet scent of rain and dew upon the forest plants. He stretched his arms, then remembered that his sword was still lost somewhere on the ground. It didn't take him long to find it, pulling it out of a slightly muddy puddle. He wiped the dew and mud off of the blade on his pant leg, then sheathed the sword and started off in the direction of Torin's tent. His eyes found Torin, stretching his arms into the morning air with a yawn. "Hey, how's the arm?" "Fine. It feels like nothing happened. I can hardly even see the scar." "Pretty cool, that healing magic, right?" Torin replied. "I can definitely see how it would come in handy." Silas nodded. "I bet Uthrin teaches us the same thing Samara was trying to do when we met her to talk about going to the crypt. She'll probably pick it up really fast." Torin shrugged. "Yeah, maybe, but we can't let her think she's better than we are. We have to keep her humble, you know?" He gave Silas a wink and then stretched his arms, and in the middle of the stretch, flexed his biceps, then raised an eyebrow and looked at Silas. "Man, I'm looking big this morning." Silas tried but couldn't keep back a smile and laughed. "Okay, Mr. Humble. Let's go find her then and meet Uthrin. I thought I might have heard her go back into her tent early this morning." Torin chuckled and followed Silas towards Samara's tent. Approaching the dew-covered canvas, Torin gave a couple of knocks on one of its outer poles. "Samara, are you still sleeping?" No answer. Torin looked at Silas and shrugged. "Do you want to take a peek inside?" "Are you kidding me? No way! She'd kill me if I looked in there without her first giving permission." Torin smiled. "Okay, Silas is coming in, so I hope you're dressed." "Torin! No, I'm not coming in. Go ahead and take your time, Samara." Torin laughed, and then looked up and saw Samara and Uthrin near the bank of the slow-moving river. Torin slapped Silas on the arm. "She never went back to the tent. Look, there she is with Uthrin already." "Oh well, guess you won't get to take a peek after all." Before Silas could say anything, Torin walked off towards Uthrin and Samara. Silas shook his head and took off after him. Uthrin greeted them as they arrived at the riverbank. The sound of gently trickling water filled Silas's ears as Uthrin directed both of the boys to sit down next to Samara.
"As you can tell from last night, we will run into our fair share of troubles during our quest. I believe that because of this, the most crucial spell for you to learn, as of now, will be a healing spell, closely followed by some basic combat spells. Torin and Silas, I've caught Samara up to about the same point that you two got to yesterday, so now all three of you should be at about the same page. I realize that Torin still has yet to tap into his inner life, but we can work on that some more today. So far, Silas is the only one to open his second mind, and he didn't really do it successfully. I hope that we don't cause another episode for you in trying again, Silas. Are you willing to give it another shot?"
Silas nodded.
"Good. Now, all of you again make the symbol of light and tap into your inner life. Bring it forth into your hands, and hold it there until I give further instruction."
All three of them made the symbols without any errors and closed their eyes. Silas reached down and found the pool of his inner life. It was much easier to find this time, and he assumed it would continue to get simpler as he learned to recognize the feeling. He brought the tingling sensation up from his stomach, into his torso, down his arms, and into his hands. His hands felt warm and alive again. He opened his eyes and looked over at Samara and Torin. They were both still sitting, concentrating on finding their inner life.
"Remember to clear your mind and focus all your energy into finding that small spark within you. Once you find it, let it take control and work its way into your hands. Imagine it inside of your blood, pumping its way from your stomach into your hands."
They sat for just a bit longer, until Samara's hands began to glow. She let out a sigh of relief at her success.
"Very good, Samara."
They all turned and looked towards Torin, whose eyes were now open. He broke the symbol with his hands and placed them in his lap. "Go ahead without me. I'll watch for now." Uthrin nodded and returned his attention to Samara and Silas.
"Now, bring your inner life from your hands up into your head and open your second mind. Once you feel the magic take its place, let it embrace you and imagine yourself removing your soul from your body, allowing it to rise into the air. As it leaves, you will gain the ability to think and observe with both your first and second mind, and we can move on."
Silas closed his eyes again and moved the energy from his hands up his arms and into his head. Upon entering his head, he felt the energy pulsing through his entire body, the same feeling that he had last time. He was yet again aware of every fiber of his being, every bone, hair, and drop of blood, all performing their functions while awaiting his next command. Silas was about to imagine his soul leaving his body, but then hesitated. Fear swept over him at the thought of having the dark visions again. He stopped, and the very blood inside of his body seemed to stand still. He was about to back out when he heard the voice of his father echo in his mind. If you keep your heart and mind focused on what's right, darkness won't be able to overpower you. The words of his father helped calm his nerves and reinvigorate his focus. He pushed away all thoughts of darkness and only focused on what was good and right. Then, imagining his soul leaving his body, he felt again as if a part of his soul seemed to rise up above his body. After it exited, the strangest feeling came over him. He felt his natural body, with his regular thoughts focusing on the task at hand, but he also felt as if he had gained a new, ethereal body that could not be seen, floating above him in the air. Slightly startled, Silas opened his eyes and looked around. He felt as if he was controlling two persons at the same time. His physical body turned around and he saw the trees and land around him. Like exercising a muscle he'd never used before, he felt the newly gained ability to also turn the ghostly body of his second mind. Through its perspective, he was able to see the exact same scenery, just from a different point of view.
Well done, Silas. Very well done. Your second mind has been opened.
With eyes glowing, Silas turned back to Uthrin with both his physical and ghostly head, still trying to make sense of what exactly he was feeling.
Concentrate upon the second mind that you have just opened, Silas. Try and think with just the new mind. Feel its influence, its tug. What differences can you gather between the thoughts you normally have and the thoughts of your second mind?
Silas concentrated upon his newfound ghostly body and homed in on its desires and thoughts, trying as best as he could to ignore the thoughts and feelings of his mortal body. I feel like it's me, but not entirely me. Almost as if it's half me and half something else.
That's exactly what it is. Your second mind is an extension of yourself, with the addition of the living element that you have conjured. It's not visible, but it exists nonetheless and can be independently controlled. Half of it belongs to you, and the other half belongs to the light. They are combined to make one person, and that person is an extension of your physical self. You are now two instead of one, and your second self is shared half and half with the light.
As confusing as his words sounded, it actually made perfect sense now that he was feeling it. He felt as if he could control his body just as regularly as ever, but at the same time had the ability to control this new ethereal body to do something completely different at the exact same time. This new body, however, seemed much different than his original. It was both attached to his normal body, but also able to act and do whatever he wanted on its own. It also had different desires than he usually had. He felt as if he were righteous, holy, and justified in all things, and refuted everything that was evil, unholy, and dark. I feel good. And by good, I mean holy, like I'm righteous, and it's my duty to banish evil from existence. I also feel like I want to help people and smite those who would cause evil and destruction.
Yes, that's because your second mind has been bound to the element of light. Those are the feelings of light mixed within yourself. Light would normally have an even greater self-righteous desire and demand for justice, but since it's only half light and half you, those feelings have been toned down. The same thing goes the other way as well. Because you are bound with the light, your normal desires have been amplified towards the good and banishment of anything dark or evil.
Silas looked over at Samara to see that she had also broken the symbol and was watching him.
The hardest part is complete. Now you can cast your first spell.
Uthrin took a knife out of his pocket and unsheathed it. He placed the blade on the palm of his hand and slowly slid it across his skin. He winced slightly, a thin line of blood slowly rising from his hand.
Now, come over here and place your hand upon mine.
Silas watched with his invisible body as his physical body moved towards Uthrin. When it had moved a short distance, he found his new second body drifting towards his physical body, as if it were attached by some sort of invisible rope. He kneeled down in front of Uthrin and placed his hand upon Uthrin's.
Now, I'm asking your physical self, the Silas that's kneeling in front of me, do you want my hand to be healed?
Silas nodded. Yeah, of course.
Now, I'm asking your second mind, the body that you have just received. Do you want my hand to be healed?
Silas felt his second mind grow ecstatic as the answer clearly flooded over his thoughts.
I need to heal you, and I will punish the blade that caused you injury.
Silas raised his eyebrows, surprised at the firmness of his own thoughts. Not only do I want to heal you, it's like I also want to destroy your knife for cutting you.
Uthran chuckled. As you learn to control your second mind more, you will be able to temper the desires of the elements. They can be overbearing at times. The more you can persuade the elemental half of your second mind, the more powerful a mage you will become. The more you get used to the way the elements change you, the more you can temper them and control your desires and passions towards your end goal. Try that now by using both your first and second half of your second mind that is you to persuade your feelings. Persuade them that, although the knife did something unjust, it's not your intent to destroy the knife, only to heal my hand.
Silas focused upon the feelings of his second mind. The desire for righteous vengeance was still strong, but he reasoned with himself that Uthran was the one who cut himself. It wasn't the knife's fault. After some time debating, the desires of his second mind calmed down and resolved that they wanted to only heal Uthran's hand. For now. All right, we're one in our desires. He shook his head slightly. It sounded weird the way he'd said it.
Then will it to be done,
Uthran responded. Silas focused on his desires, willing the effect to take place. A warm radiance began to fill his hands as the magic began to flow. The magic seeped from his palms into Uthran's hands, glowing with a brilliant yellow light as Uthran's wound began to mend itself. After only a few moments, the light slowly dissipated. Uthran wiped the remaining drops of blood from his hand on the grass, then raised his hand and showed it to Silas.
Well done.
His hand was completely healed. A small white line spread across his palm, the only sign that damage had been there just moments ago.
That was excellent, Silas. Now, end the connection with your second mind. To do that, just allow your ethereal body to enter into your physical body, then allow the connection to the light to be released.
Silas concentrated his efforts into moving his ghostly body into his physical body. It slowly floated into place, then entered. A strange resistance followed, and Silas allowed the connection to fade. The light bid him a noble farewell as it left. His vision and other senses went from 2 back down to 1, and the tingling feeling of his inner life slowly flowed down into his body, back to its resting place in his stomach. Silas leaned back, his heart pounding quickly at the exhilaration. A smile curled up his lips, an immensely strong sense of accomplishment bubbling to the surface.
You have a gift, Silas, Uthran said softly. There aren't many who are able to progress with the speed and success that you have just demonstrated.
Uthran looked at both Samara and Torin.
Don't feel bad that you weren't successful this morning. It's not a simple task to learn how to tap into your inner life and ultimately open your second mind.
Torin cleared his throat. Uthran, I think I've decided that Samara and Silas can go ahead and learn how to use magic, but I think I'd rather do what I'm already good at. I've always been pretty gifted with a sword. Do you think you could teach me more?
Uthran smiled. Of course, Torin. There are many advantages of knowing how to defend yourself with a sword. I've been in many situations where I had to rely not on the elements, but on my physical abilities to save myself. I will teach you what I know, but Geode would be better suited to be your master, as he has much more experience than I do. When he returns, I'll let him know your desires, and he can teach you. He won't be as good as your father, but his skills are excellent, and a greater master would be difficult to find.
Torin smiled and jumped to his feet. All right! Samara stood and extended her hand to Silas. Silas received the gesture as she helped him to his feet. Good job, Silas. That was amazing. Maybe you could give me some pointers sometime? I feel like I was really close. It's just that last part that always gets me. I'd take any help you're willing to give. Silas grinned. Yeah, of course. I'd love to help any way that I can.
I would expect nothing less, Uthran said, rising to his feet. Help each other to learn. We are all in this together, and there's no room for jealousy or hoarding of secrets. The only way we're going to be able to find all of the stones, enter the Vault of Kings, and ultimately stop Melos is by using our strengths to help where others are weak. Now, get your things together. Let's pack up camp and move downriver.